that's right. Gary's Talk Show Radio, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday nights. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Dreamers Talk Show will fix your despair. If you want to talk conspiracies, Night Dreamers is for you. Top secret case, alien space, it's Gary with the news. Tune in on the radio, don't let Big Brother know. They're listening to everything, even Gary's late night show. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Show Dreamers Talk Show will fix your despair, because Gary's talking to you at night.
Join your host, Gary Anderson, as we venture into the unknown, diving deep into the mysteries of the cosmos, searching for the truth behind alien encounters, Bigfoot sightings, and all things paranormal. Prepare yourself for a journey beyond the ordinary, into the world where dreams become reality and the night holds secrets waiting to be discovered.
Well, good evening, everybody. Gary here from Night Dreams Talk Radio. Tonight, I want to take a special shout out to all the truckers that listen to the show, and especially to Jack Baker, who long hauls out of Eugene, Oregon. He's sent me a long email saying that he had an encounter one night as he was on Interstate 5 coming into Washington, that he saw a Bigfoot off to the side of the road. Very interesting. Truckers out there, you can certainly get a hold of us and tell us your stories about dogmen, Bigfoot, UFOs, or any of those cryptids, and other subjects at nightdreamstalkradio@gmail.com. Well, we got a great guest. It's an extended show here tonight, 90 minutes long, and we're going to take some call-ins, and please, on chat, get on chat tonight. And also subscribe to our channel and hit that bell if you're watching us on YouTube. On the apps, give us a good review. That's very important. We'll be right back after Guy Ticker with the news. And boy, he has a lot to say here tonight.
The strange news in brief. I'm Guy Ticker. A Texas man has 24,268 video games and holds the world record for the largest collection of video games, 24,268. I'm Guy Ticker. The strange news is brought to you by Night Dreams Talk Radio Network. Do you have a strange story? Contact us at nightdreamstalkradio.com.
Well, it is Friday the 13th, JC. What do you think about that? Have you had anything strange happen to you?
Yes, I have, as a matter of fact. As you know, I shouldn't even left the house because I went to get a donut, and as I told you off the air, I had a little weirdness happen. But you know what? I didn't realize it until you mentioned it. I would have stayed home. I'd have put a chain around my ankle and was like, nope, not going out today.
Wow, what happened to you?
Well, you sure?
Go ahead. I know you got a sweet tooth. Go ahead.
I did. You know me well. So I go down. It's only a couple blocks up the street. They figure I'd get some couple donuts. So they had some nice chocolate looking ones, with the Bavarian cream in it. So I got 3 of those. And, the bags you put them in, Gary, they're clear see-through. I mean, clear. So I put them on the counter right in front of the guy. Very popular gas station, too. And the guy's looking at him. He double looks. Then he gets right up on top and gets his finger out, starts counting. First, he asked me how many. I told him 3. Then he double looked, and he looked again. He took his finger out, and he's like, 6 inches away counting. I'm like, what's going on? He goes, well, I'm going to make sure you got 3. I'm like, you think I'm lying to you? It's a clear see-through bag in front of you. I'm not going to rip you up for $1.20. I'm not lying to you. Here he's insulting me. I'm a liar, or I can't count to 3. I don't know which one, but, it was bizarre. It was bizarre.
Well, were the donuts worth it?
I'm still weighing in on that one. They weren't bad, but they weren't exactly as fresh as they should be. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you got to always watch out for those. And when you go in a gas station, a lot of times, I love donuts just like you do. But have you ever gone into a grocery store or a donut shop or whatever, and you see hundreds of flies in the cage?
No, I haven't. Gee, I have not seen that. I would immediately leave. I had another bad. No, I think about another bad donut story about 6 months ago. As you know, I have a certain allergic to a certain thing, and they got these peanut butter ones that the frosting looks just like the maple. Right.
How fast did your mouth and your eyes swell up?
Well, I asked the lady first. I said, "Where's the peanut butter and where's the maple ones?" Oh, she said, "The ones on top are, guarantee." I said, "You sure?" She goes, "Yeah, because you can't smell the difference." So anyway, I took a big bite of it. I knew right away. I spit it out, after now this was a place that charges almost $2 a donut. So anyway, I spit it out. You can't take them back now, but yeah, just that little taste made my eyes swell shut. Look like it was in a boxing ring.
$2 for a donut?
It's ridiculous.
Not really. You ought to live on the West Coast. You're getting a bargain.
It should be like $1.20. It was only, listen, they were only $1.50 like 6 months ago. Something happened.
You remember the 50-cent pieces, the JFK 50-cent pieces?
Oh, yeah.
Nowadays, if you go around here on the West Coast and you say, "Give me a cup of coffee and a donut," you get this cup of coffee. It's about 3.5 ounces, and you get a donut the size of that silver, half dollar.
Yeah,
and by the time they put the hole in it, it looks like a lifesaver.
Oh my goodness, you're really getting your money's worth.
Oh yeah, only here with the economy. Everything is going crazy with the economy, but house mortgage prices are going down.
Well, I guess that's some of the pros and cons.
You want to buy a house?
Yeah, but of course, when you got to buy the house, going to need a wheelbarrow to carry, $10 worth of money.
You don't really have to worry about the recession till after the election.
Oh, that's when we got to worry.
That's when you got to worry about it.
Gotcha.
We're going to have a good show tonight. We got 2 guests. Our first guest is Jeff Harman, and we're going to talk about, a little bit about the paranormal, a little bit about UFOs and disclosure, and Roswell. So it's going to be a really good show.
It is. Yeah, Jeff, he's good. He was on. He was good the last time he was on, too. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And the second guest, too. You're right. Frank Kimbler is going to be a great one.
Oh, yeah. Let's find out some information about our guests. You want to?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Jeff Harman is a second-generation astrologer, paranormal researcher, and spiritual consultant with 47 years of experience. He's the only astrologer on the planet who stores his clients' records in filing cabinets given to him by the one and only George Carlin. Harman offers detailed personal and business readings using Vedic, Naadi, classical, and Astro-location astrology. He also offers corrective measures, and he works with clients to design custom talismans made with natural untreated gems. He has solved many paranormal cases involving haunted dwellings, UFO-related events, and possession. He has cleared people, homes, and commercial spaces experiencing negative spiritual attachments, and has assisted treasure hunters in deciding if, when, and where to dig. He's also been contracted for special research projects. Concurrently, Harman has also worked in many areas of the entertainment industry. He has patented technologies, and he's performed forensic work as a sound expert in association with many federal, state, and local government agencies. If you'd like to find out a little more, visit Jeff's website at www.jeffharman.com.
Jeff, are you there?
Yes, I am. How you doing?
I lost you on the camera, and the people can't see you.
Turn that camera on. There we go.
Okay,
There's the camera. How you doing?
I am doing good. So I hear also you made and modified microphones?
Yeah, that's how I actually ended up coming out to California years ago. I think it was in the late 70s, early 80s. I came in and was doing a lot of modified things for microphone preamps, microphones themselves. In fact, I did one for George Carlin and a few other celebrities that I won't mention because they're still alive and they may not want me to. But a lot of fun. I really enjoy that. It's a good time.
Audio industry has really changed, especially in broadcasting. I've been in it so long. But when I got on, they invented the rubber wheel, And, back, even 20, 30 years ago, 10 years ago, the people really liked the bass to their voice, and presence. But nowadays, it's gone the opposite. Everybody wants to sound like Howard Stern.
Right. Well, everybody likes what they like, and everything seems to flip around a couple of times every few decades. So, yeah, you never know what to expect. So, yeah, it's definitely a different time right now, no doubt.
Yeah, I got really frustrated. I went through, in the last 5 years, probably 10 microphones before I found one I really liked.
Yeah.
It's just because each one has a different flavor.
Oh, they do. They got a totally different flavor. I love tube mics too, and tube preamps. They just have a warm harmonic distortion to them that I really like. Silver is always your best conductor, even in digital. Everybody says, yeah, but it's digital. But see, if you go from the diaphragm into the mic preamp, you can't. It's always analog. It's never going to be digital. So, what we always modified was between the diaphragm and the actual mic preamps themselves, or if it was a moving coil, we'd wire it with silver. Silver has the most free valence electrons, so it has the most propagation of sound quality. That's why it sounds so good. Everybody says, oh no, gold is better. Actually, gold is worse than copper. The only reason everybody uses gold is because gold doesn't tarnish on the edge connects. You always hear it's gold plated, so everybody thinks it's great. But actually, silver is your best. The problem with silver is keeping it from tarnishing. But when it comes to audio, I remember A&M Records. I used to go in there, and Shelly Yakis was running that place. That was right when the police were all hitting it real big back in the 80s. And I could tell you, they love silver. We used to clamp on all kinds of stuff into the consoles, run silver wire. It was amazing. A lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, and it had a lot of warmth to it. That's what I like.
It does.
Yeah, nowadays you go buy a preamp or whatever, it's all integrated circuit and everything. It just doesn't have, no matter how hard you try to dial it in, you just can't do it.
Oh, yeah. Go listen to a good Led Zeppelin record. Even the old Elvis stuff that was recorded back in Sun Studios. If you listen to the release version of You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog, it just punches. And this was 1950s. And that was all tubes. Those guys really knew audio. They really knew audio.
Oh, yeah.
That was science back then.
I love tube microphones. I really do.
Yeah, me too.
Now, going with you, what got you into what you're doing? What got you into the paranormal and ufology and all this other stuff?
Well, that's a long story. It actually started when I was a really little kid. I forget how old, probably 7, 8 years old, something like that. Had a couple of guinea pigs, and they were sleeping down in the cage. And as a little boy, I had a dream that one of them died. And I jumped out of bed. I lived up on the 3rd floor. So I run all the way down, go into the yard, open up the cage door, and the guinea pig's laying there exactly like I saw. And, being a little kid, I was crying, upset and everything. And I told my mom, I said, Mom, I dreamed this exactly. She says, you astral traveled. My mother was a really cool lady. She was really into all kinds of stuff. She was actually a specialist in hemodialysis. She was a nurse and had a lot of diverse interests. And what happened was in the 70s, she got me into astrology, and it started. So that was kind of the beginning of my paranormal experiences, and I had a lot of them when I was a child. She'd always explain to me, this world is not what the linear left brain world tells you. There's spirits and angels and all this stuff, and and she told me I had astral traveled as that little kid. I said, what does that mean? She explained it to me. She goes, this is when we go out of the body attached to the silver cord. And of course, this is what happens to us all when we become deceased. We don't cease to exist. The consciousness expands on. So what's interesting is in the 70s, my dad was very mechanical, and he had a logging company, and he worked for the county, and we would get contracts. I was driving semis and cutting down trees, typical guy stuff, right? Doing carpentry work. And my mother, I started driving, and my mother was calling my girlfriends to the T. And she said, this one's this way or that one's that way. And she would explain them perfectly. And I said, well, how do you know? And she goes, well, I got their charts. And at that time I said, come on, that stuff doesn't really work, does it? The astrology. And she goes, well, you better check it out before you knock it. And I did. And I was quite impressed because, I'd been programmed like everybody else to think astrology is a pseudoscience and all this stuff. And even though I believed in the paranormal and all that, I wasn't down with astrology because everything's your sun sign stuff from the 60s, And she started showing me some pretty interesting stuff. And I was really impressed. And that really planted a seed. And I had a recording studio in a production company through the 80s all the way into the late 90s. And a lot of fun because I was always doing astrology in the background with people that would come in and out. And I'd, wonder why, one guy who was a Berkeley College of School graduate had a chart like he did. And the next guy coming in with a bone in his nose in a punk rock group, or, the banker I was doing the commercial for. Whenever I could get a chart, I was doing that. And I was really studying with some very interesting people in the occult and also in astrology. And at the same time, I had the blessing of being exposed to a lot of religious organizations. My studio got hired. We were doing all these 16 millimeter production films as well as recordings. It was in Chicago in the Bellarmine, it's called the Bellarmine Retreat House. And all these theologians were coming in from all over the world, and including rabbis. And it was very interesting because I got to record all that. And we were also doing Betacam at the time. This is back in the early 80s, actually late 70s. I actually filmed Mother Teresa of Calcutta. And I know a lot of people think she's a child trafficker. I personally don't believe that at all. I thought she was a really elegant lady and very humble too, and actually didn't like the spotlight. I actually don't think she liked her Nobel Peace Prize because it brought a lot of attention to her. But anyways, I was exposed to all this religious, hardcore stuff over here. And then on the right, I've got all this occult and astrology stuff going. And that's how I got going. And then what happened to me in the late 90s, I hit a Mercury period, which is a 17-year-long period in astrology, and it just exploded. And I had also had tons of UFO experiences. I grew up in northern Wisconsin, and I've had motorcycles shut down. I've had lost time. I used to track UFOs in the 70s up over our lake, and my dad would always think I was crazy, right? And I got him out of bed one day or one night at about 3 o'clock in the morning. I says, come on down here. I says, look at this. He says, yeah, you're right. That's pretty weird. So I got him on my side too. But I've had many, many encounters with ufology, paranormal, ghosts, demonic stuff, you name it. And I really started getting into clearing work. That all started coming in the late 80s and studying many different disciplines about who we are as spiritual beings having a physical experience. And I think the Vedic astrology was one of the most compelling things for me to learn. And people may have heard of Naadi astrology, the Naadi palm leaves, often people have heard about. And this really goes down the rabbit hole as to who the heck are we and what is this planet? I always say we're all stuck on spin cycle here in the soul cauldron, right? And what's interesting is it does seem to be a place where spirit manifests. The earth is really a very divine and diverse place where spirit and all kinds of life manifests into physical form. And that's really what attracted me to the old astrology, is that it really looks at it from that perspective, rather than the modern astrology that says, oh, you're a Pisces, you're an Aries, and all this sun sign crap. Not that that doesn't have some vague general accuracy, but when you get into the older stuff, the stuff that the kings and the queens and the pharaohs and many of the rabbinical texts had, pretty wild stuff. And the Vedic stuff too is really, it's way beyond. It's one of the oldest occult sciences known, and it's been kept very secret in the secret societies. I had a chance to meet, what was his name? He skips my mind right now, but he was the astrologer for Ronald Reagan. Everybody says it was for Nancy Reagan, but it wasn't. It was for Ronald Reagan. And he used astrology a lot. A lot of people do. I've actually got clients, I shouldn't mention this, in pretty interesting places in banking and government that they really appreciate the cycles and the timing to do things, which is called electional astrology.
Do they use it? Did they use it for the economy? To know what the economy future is going to be?
Yeah, a lot of them use it in trading. I've had a lot of friends. Arch Crawford, Alfie Lavoie, on and on. There's a lot of astrologers I've rubbed elbows with. Also, Bill Meridian. These are all different astrologers that I've had contact in and out of at different times, and Robert Hand as well. And yeah, timing is really an interesting thing in astrology. One of the guys that I studied with, who's now not around anymore, he was a Vedic astrologer, and he did a lot of stuff for the London bankers. Now, if you really want to know who the London bankers are, they're the owners George Carlin refers to. They own this place. We hear about Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street owning everything, which they kind of do. But these guys seem to be above them. We hear all the talk about George Soros and Klaus Schwab. Those are the lower guys on the totem pole. And the interesting thing is, in 1913, Woodrow Wilson kind of signed something in called the Federal Reserve Act. And there is your owners right there. And they tend to, from everything I hear, use astrology pretty slavishly. They really like it.
That is very interesting, too, when you think about that. Yeah, again, are those the people that actually control more than our economy?
Well, if you think about it, yeah. I mean, when you really follow the money, they're outside of government and yet control it through the flows of money. I think it was Rothschild. He said it best. He said, if you give me control of the money, and I don't care who makes the laws. And there's your rabbit hole right there.
And from that, too, what does it tell you about the future of mankind and this planet?
I think it's in a very dangerous place right now. I think that'll shift. What's interesting, you and I were talking before the show, and I don't want to say anything that gets your show pulled off of YouTube, but I have been mentioning this on YouTube, and we haven't gotten pulled about this. I've been on my podcast, which we do live every Monday morning and Thursdays, and then also I try and put out a monthly report, and sometimes we put out a weekly report. And I've been mentioning that we have a cycle right now. Every 84 years, we have a planet called Uranus that goes through the Pleiades. And the Pleiades is also an area that a lot of ufologists talk about, the Pleiadians, right? And it's interesting because this gets back into the old Greek legends about the seven sisters of Hades, right? And how Atlas had to put them into this dimension, or these seven stars, and he held up the sky, right? There's many legends about this. And it's actually on my podcast that we just did a couple of weeks ago. And I was talking about how every 84 years, this planet traverses the sidereal constellation of Taurus for approximately 7 years. Well, if we go back 84 years ago, what do we have? World War II. If we go back 84 years before that, what do we have? The Civil War. If we go back 84 approximate years, and these are 7-year windows around that, so it's not exactly 84, but it's very close. We had the Revolutionary War. If you go back 84 years before that, look at the dissension, the Black Plagues, and all the stuff that was going on in Europe. So, whether someone believes in astrology or not, and I'm not one who believes in anything. Anytime I hear somebody tell me I believe, I always get nervous, right? Because I always like to be objective. If I can't come up with some, hardcore reality out of it, I kind of am apprehensive to just believe, right? But I can tell you the data really shows statistically that the world goes through a lot of trials and tribulations about every 84 to approximately 90 years. And that's the 7-year windows centered around the 84 year cycle of Uranus. And we're in it right now. Who would have ever thought we'd hear the words World War III? And yet, Jack Keane on Fox News, he's the head, committee on the Senate, that goes for war, and he goes into meetings and he said, we are in a higher probability. In fact, I actually have a clip of him on my YouTube channel. You just go to Jeff Harman, astrologer, and he's actually using those words. He says, we are in a higher probability right now of a war breaking out on a global scale with Russia, China, and the Middle East than at any time since World War II. And you go back and look at the astrology, it's exactly where we're at. And that brings me to, I've been also seeing a lot more UFO activity, or if you want, UAP'S, whatever you want to call them. I've definitely seen more craft lately. And I believe that they would intervene in an all-out exchange. And Admiral Byrd, who went down into Antarctica and is purported to have gone under the earth and was brought down with his squadron, was actually told by inner earth beings that if an all-out exchange happens, they will intervene and stop it. And let's hope that's true, because that's something we don't want to see.
Well, yeah, I don't need to see a big flash, and then that's the end of mankind as we know it. It's really scared, what's going on. I stay out of politics on this show, but I can honestly tell you what I've been seeing lately just doesn't compute in my mind that, with all the different countries, all the different leaders, what is going on? It's really bizarre.
It's the Twilight Zone. I mean, when you look at it,
we can make a movie.
This isn't political. This is just cycles that humanity goes through. And, this is an interesting topic, because you and I were also talking before the show in Vedic lore. If you've ever heard of the Rig Veda and the Bhagavad Gita, these are ancient texts that talk a lot about the cycles, and the Puranas as well, and the journeys of souls having a physical experience, which is what we're doing on this earth. And it talks about these time cycles, and there's something known as the precession of the equinoxes, where our solar system is going around the central sun somewhere just short of 26,000 years. Now, some people say it's 25,700 years. Other people say, no, it's 25,900. Whatever the number is, it's somewhat short of 26,000 years. It's also known as the Great Year. Well, these time periods show where humanity becomes very enlightened. And we also live longer. In fact, we hear this in the Bible and many sacred texts of different religions, where humans used to live 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 years of age. And what's fascinating is we seem to fall into the sewer, or started heading down into the deeper ladder right around 3000 BC. Most of your PhDs and scholars will tell you that's somewhere right around that time that writing started to show up again in a very cohesive form. And there was something that happened here where consciousness fell down, and we could not telepathically communicate. We've all heard of Atlantis and Lemuria and all these, cities that were purported to have had free energy, and many people are familiar with Tartaria, and which is a very interesting thing, where there seems to be these destructive cycles that are hidden from normal printed history, and we keep going and rejuvenating. Well, one thing's for sure, if this is correct, we are going to hit like a golden age about 4,000 years from now, and maybe just a couple of thousand years, we hit what we call a silver age. Now, some people disagree with those exact timings, but there may be a lot of truth to that. And we really fell into the dark ages, like they call it in history, somewhere around 300 to 500 BC. It was really a dark age of consciousness. And if you look at what was going on and all the monarchies and all the stuff and the spike balls and the swords and the fighting and, like Braveheart, all the way up until, again, we started becoming a little more advanced in the 1500s and 1600s, getting into weaponry and warfare and metallurgy and all this stuff. And then as we now come into the Industrial Revolution, which ironically was shown exactly on a Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in the 1700s, almost exactly when George Washington defected and went with the revolutionists and defeated England. And that was really the commencement, truly, of the Industrial Revolution. And I believe the Masons knew that. The secret societies have held the true astrology very accurately. And there are about 1,000-year increments where Jupiter and Saturn join in what they call great conjunctions. And then there's sub-conjunctions called mutations about every 240 years. They're about 240 years. And we just hit a new era in 2020, even though we had COVID and all that. But we've just entered a very high-tech era as of the winter solstice of 2020, according to those systems. And of course, we had COVID breakout exactly on a Saturn-Pluto conjunction. So it's interesting, we seem to ebb and flow forward through the creation and destruction phases as humanity advances forward. But we're in one right now, and let's hope we get through it without a catastrophic event here over this next 7 years, that's for sure.
I hope so. And hopefully we don't have ETs coming down and stopping it. And well, it's a good way to meet them too, isn't it?
Well, that'd be good if they stopped it.
Yeah, it would be
that'd be
darn
really good if they stopped the nuclear war. I'd welcome them.
Yeah, me too. We need to take a break. We'll be back in 3 minutes with Jeff, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Roswell and whatever he wants to talk about right here on Night Dreams Talk Radio. So we'll be right back.
Time slips. A haunted office building on a haunted street. A haunted coal town. Mysterious black cats. Unexplained light anomalies. UFOs, UAP'S in the air and on the ground. Bridges in liminal spaces. Cryptids, shamans, and a werewolf. Disclosure. You don't need a ranch in Utah. All this and more happens in rural southwestern Pennsylvania. Coming soon from Haunted Hills and Hollows 1 and 2 author Kevin Paul, Politics and the Paranormal in Greene County, Pennsylvania. Available this fall on Amazon and at other fine booksellers. Digital broadcasting radio, like it should be. The best in paranormal talk radio with your host, Gary Anderson.
And we are back. Just think about, the future, the past, and what has been lost in the past, because I really feel this planet has been rebooted several times. Hopefully we're not on that stage to be rebooted again. Back in 1947, there was a weather balloon, or was it a weather balloon? Was it a UFO? That's, what we're talking about is Roswell. Jeff, what's your feeling about Roswell in 1947?
I think it's, I wasn't there, that's for sure, but I can tell you I believe it's true. I have had a lot of contact with MUFON when it was fully active here in Los Angeles almost 26, 27 years ago, and really have been kind of involved with a lot of ufologists and remote viewers and various different organizations that do paranormal research. And my opinion is it's absolutely true. I think they've been around a lot longer than that. I think that's just when the military actually was caught.
Caught lying. Yeah, that's when you really think about it. Oh, yes, first they announced to the news media, AP and The Wire, that, they had wreckage of a UFO. A few hours later, could you imagine whoever addressed that out to the news media without the clearance of the president and the Pentagon? I wonder what happened to them. But from the standpoint, then, they had to change their story. How do you go from wreckage of a UFO to a weather balloon? They're two different things. I think I lost you.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're dealing with dimensional beings that have been here for a long, long time. And, there's a huge base underneath the shelf right off. It's in between Channel Islands and and it's actually called Point Dume, D-U-M-E, in Malibu. And there are crafts coming in and out of there. I have personally seen a lot of crafts in that area, visually seen them. And I've seen some strange stuff too. In fact, I've actually talked to guys in the military who don't want to be disclosed who they are, but they say they're measuring craft coming up out of that water at propagation speeds that are faster than they can almost measure. And it's almost like a dimensional shift. And I can tell you, my opinion is I have seen so much here on the West Coast, as well as other areas of the world and the country, that's just inexplicable. I think we haven't been alone for eons. And there's a lot of belief that there are many different versions of extraterrestrials subterraneanly, as well as that come in and out of here through portals and dimensions. There was a talk I went to. It's a book anybody could find. It's called Left at Eastgate. And this gentleman wrote an amazing book. He was at the NATO base in Europe. And this, I think, was back in the 80s. I could be wrong on the date. But he had mentioned how he and a number of other military officers witnessed this craft coming down. And they all experienced different phenomena. Some were burned, some were, had memory issues. And he said it was the strangest thing because after that craft left, the nukes that weren't supposed to be there were all hauled away. It's almost like somebody came down and said, we detect the nukes in a place that they weren't supposed to be. And they were literally bringing in cement trucks over the next month, hauling the nukes out and cementing all these bunkers over. So pretty wild stuff. And I think it was back right around 2000, maybe 7, 8, 9, something like that, probably around 2009 or 10. I had George Parks, who used to be, he's passed away now. George was a really nice guy in Tucson, Arizona, who ran the chapter of MUFON for Tucson. And he and Roger Scher had both asked me to do a study on astrology, see if there was any correlations to events like Maelstrom Air Force Base. If anyone not familiar with that, that was where the commander of Maelstrom Air Force Base had literally said we saw light orbs come in around the missile installations, and afterwards none of the missiles worked. The blown circuit boards, they had to go in and replace stuff. And there was one comment that they were warned, and that was another warning that they were told if an all-out attack, an exchange happened, that the extraterrestrials or whoever they were, would step in and intervene and stop it. And, I looked at that. I looked at also the Travis Walton abduction. That was unique because I had Travis Walton's birth chart, and I was actually able to look at transits and progressions. And that's what astrologers use. I always say God created time, so everything wouldn't happen at once, right? So astrology is the study of time because there really is no time. If you think about it, The ancient Vedantic scriptures say that the first breath when we're born is the synchronization of time and experience. Now, in the East, they call that time and karma. And what's interesting, us Westerners, when we hear the word karma, we get a little queasy, right? But it's the synchronization of time with the journey of the soul. I always call it the road you're on. And what's interesting is Travis Walton's chart showed an awful lot of correspondences to an event like that being happened. And I looked at a number of other events. There was not only Minot, I didn't have anyone's direct chart to look at that, but the Shag Harbor crash, we also looked at that. We also looked at Betty and Barney Hill and Whitley Strieber. The other one was the Allgash fishing abductions. I don't know if you've heard of these, but
No,
these
I
are
didn't hear about
all
the
somewhat famous events. And every one of them showed either mundane astrological lineups that would show a probability of something unusual happening, or it lined up to the individual's birth chart in their progressions and transits. I've worked a lot with remote viewers too. I've had a couple of different groups actually have me do studies as to why certain individuals in the groups would hit their targets very accurately at certain times, and other times they wouldn't. And we also found that fixed stars, as the Earth goes around on its axis, and also times of year, had a real correlation to the accuracy of targets, as well as the individual's own responsive reaction to the astrology. Meaning, if you take your birth chart and you look at the transits and progressions to it, it lined up very accurately. So, in fact, I found some people would fall off the beam and they couldn't hit their targets for certain windows of time. Sometimes it was quite a long time. And it was really due to the cycles and progressions that astrologers call transits and progressions lined up in the chart.
Now, have you ever checked with psychics too, besides remote reviewers?
Yeah. I mean, really, psychic work is a form of remote viewing, if you will. Yeah.
Well,
So, yeah.
if you say that to a remote viewer, they get upset. I found that out the other day.
Oh yeah, well, it depends on who you're talking to, but yeah, I know they tend to lean towards a more scientific modality. So yeah, they do get irritated, some of them, but it is an intuitive process as well, even though they don't like to admit it. And I think some of the studies warrant that. I've had a number of remote viewers have a lot of paranormal phenomena come in on them, where they've seen orbs and had stuff attacking them, etc. And this is a very interesting thing, and I don't think you can draw any simple conclusions because everyone is completely unique. And but psychics, psychics are a whole nother world. Regressionary therapists, I have a lot of clients who are psychiatrists as well as psychologists, and that's another whole world. And I really like certain paranormal research that's going on by psychiatrists and psychologists, especially the ones who are really looking into the probability of phenomena happening, where it's possession, etc., that goes on without trying to just come up with a pharmaceutical solution. In fact, one of my favorite people, I mentioned this a lot on our podcasts, is a man named Dr. Carl Wickland. He was born in the late 1800s, and he became a psychiatrist at the Chicago School of Medicine in the teens of last century, in the early 1900s. And he was a very left brain, hardcore scientist, did not believe in anything spiritual whatsoever. And what happened is he met a lady that he became smitten with, and he married her, and she was a psychic channel. And talk about opposites meeting. And what happened is he knew she was not crazy and not irrational, so he wanted to study from a psychiatric standpoint whether she was delusional or not when she took on various different spirits. Well, one came into her when he was studying her who looked at Dr. Carl Wicklund and said, "You're the one shocking me with that lightning." And see, Dr. Carl Wicklund was originally probably the founding father of shock therapy treatment, which was taking what they call a Wimhurst generator, that's named after Wimhurst from the 1800s, who developed this kind of Tesla device that puts out very high voltage, low current. And this is still used to this day, variations of it, to dislodge schizophrenia, multiple personality disorder, and very deep psychological problems. And what he had done was given a shock therapy treatment to this individual who was now in his wife, and said, "You're the one who was shocking me with this lightning." And they proceeded to explain every detail that had went on. And Dr. Wicklund was just aghast. He's like, I can't believe this. He said, "You had to have been there." He said, "Well, of course I was there." So Dr. Wicklund said, "You must be possessing my patient's aura." He got him to realize he was deceased and possessing the patient's aura, and got him to realize, hey, you're not in a physical body anymore. You've been possessing one. And that's when his consciousness shifted. He saw his mother that he hadn't seen like 50 years or whatever it was. It's all in the book. And it's a book called 30 Years Among the Dead. That was why that book earned its name, because for the next 30 years, Dr. Carl Wicklund documented probably some of the most valuable scientific evidence. You know, today everybody's buzzwording about OBE and NDEs, which is all great, and I respect that. But they ought to read Dr. Carl Wicklund's work, because we're all going to have an OBE when we exit the body known as death. And this is really fascinating stuff, because consciousness is not localized to the body, hence why astral travel can work, why remote viewing, psychic work, all this stuff is very real. And he, I think, has put forth some of the most scientific and compelling work. I mean, he would literally identify people who said, "I was so-and-so," and they would go verify it, that the person had just died, you know, within a relatively short period of time, could have been a year, 6 months, and even verified how they died. Like one guy fell off a roof onto a pile of lumber, and he just thought he got hurt, but he was actually killed. And he was still possessing another person's body, which happened to be an employee of his. And Dr. Wicklund was hired because that man started getting schizophrenia, and they found it was his previous employer who died, who was possessing his auric field.
That is,
and this stuff is very real, very, very real. And I mentioned many books on our podcast that verify this with psychiatrists and psychologists, and many of them are unhappy because the psychiatric boards and the state boards frown upon this stuff. They want, you know, they don't want to hear about ghosts. They don't want to hear about disincarnate souls. They want pharmaceuticals and surgery. You know?
Yeah, a lot of pills.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeff, we got a caller. Let's find out who we have. Who do we have?
This is Tom.
Hi, Tom. What's your question to Jeff?
Well, my question to Jeff is, when I totally agree with him when he makes a statement about cycles. There have been many, from the 26,000 year one that he mentions to the 84 to 90 year one that he's talking about. But my question to him, when I look at the polarities, plural, that are going on this planet, what, in his opinion, is it going to take, if anything, to raise some people's consciousness so that they are really aware that this matrix that we're in, this third dimensional matrix, is not the end all be all? There are dimensions and more dimensions that exist out there. In his opinion, is there any possibility at all for those people that are unconscious to actually truly become conscious, barring some catastrophic event?
That's a really good one, Tom. I have to say, there's an old saying, consciousness raises funeral by funeral. And this is the interesting thing about, there's a wonderful book that I always tell people they should read before they die, and it's called The Magus of Strovolos. It's by Kyriakos Markides. It's about a healer who lived on the island of Cyprus in the city of Strovolos. And it's probably one of the most profound books for anyone of any religious denomination to read. In fact, I'd love to throw this book out of helicopters before I die for everybody to read. And the interesting thing about it is definitely addresses some of what you're speaking about, and that is that we all have our lower conscious mind. In fact, there's another text I refer to a lot. A lot of this stuff we cover on my podcast, and you just go to Jeff Harman, astrologer, and we have a lot of great talks about this. And that is the lower conscious mind. We all have this mark right here, and they say the guardian angel knocks us out at first breath. They actually say when we're attached, the spirit, psyche, and soul is attached to the womb at first, or I should say at conception, and then the 9 months of gestation or whatever it ends up being, whether we come premature or late, when we exit the womb and the umbilical cord is cut, the breathing process starts. So breath is synonymous with spirit. We're knocked out. And that's that mark, the mark of silence between our nose and our upper lip. This is actually mentioned in a very ancient Aramaic text called the Sefer Haggadah. Sefer is book, and Haggadah is the legends of the soul, and it's profound. And they're not legends either, in my opinion. But what is fascinating is that we're all at some state of conscious awareness. This is why mind control is very real. In fact, George Carlin was right. It's a big club and they beat us over the head every day telling us what to believe. But a lot of us don't believe it. And there's so many people at different states of conscious awareness. And again, this is where you get into the dogmas of society and religions and all this stuff, where some people buy it hook, line, and sinker, and other people don't. And I think we're all at a different level of evolutionary soul consciousness. In fact, the Vedic astrology says we keep reincarnating here in the soul cauldron until that conscious awareness and the purification and rectification of the soul gets to a critical point, and then we escape from Alcatraz and we go on to other, not that the earth is Alcatraz, but that's kind of my phrase of it, because it can seem that way, and we move on to other worlds, or we reincarnate at much higher ascended levels here and help our brothers and sisters. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I really do. In fact, there's something called planetary yogas and configurations in a birth chart using the Vedic and the ancient Naadi astrology that really indicates the evolutionary process of where we're at on the ladder. It's kind of like Jacob's ladder in the Bible. Some souls are coming down and some are going up. So this is like the ultimate playground. At least this is one of them. They claim in certain ancient texts that this planet is one of many hundreds similar. They're all somewhat different and at different conscious evolutionary states. And then there's many other planets at much higher dimensions and lower. And then there's other complete dimensional universes. They claim there could be 49 parallel universes and 49 subdimensions within each one. I can't balance my checkbook, let alone
yeah.
One.
Hey, Jeff, we got another caller. Who do we have out there?
Hey, this is Elvis
What is your question for Jeff?
from Delaware. The question I'd like to ask Jeff: what does he think of the Q, like the Q movement? Do you think it's real? Has he done the astrology on it?
I have. I've had people ask me about it, and there's something to it. I think it's there's something to it. Yeah, I do agree, and I think there's a lot of secret stuff that's going on right now. There's many different, like Derek Johnson, I'm sure you've heard of, and other people. There does seem to be some truth to these things. I can't verify them. I know like 107 and many other people have been making a lot of, comments about where things are at. I think we have a global war going on right now between the globalists and the nationalists, not to get into politics, but, George Carlin was right. Forget the politicians. You have owners. And there are certain politicians who are owned, bought, and paid for. It doesn't matter what denomination, Republican, Democrat, Independent, it doesn't matter. A lot of them are bought and paid for. And a lot of them aren't. And I think we're at a point right now, Elon Musk said it best. The Constitution of this country truly is sacred. It really is. If you got to have an IQ above room temperature just to figure out that, wow, this is probably some of the most advanced thinking. I mean, think about the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. It gives every single human being the right to exercise free speech, exercise the right of religion. Doesn't matter what you look like, your race, your creed, doesn't matter. It gives freedom to all people. And of course, this country proved that during the Civil War. And what's so profound about America is, the founding fathers not only were consulting themselves, but they consulted the Iroquois Indians and many other, very intelligent people brought it in. I mean, just get yourself a copy of the Constitution. It's absolutely amazing. And the Bill of Rights and the amendments. And, it's a country right now that I think is under attack, and the astrology shows that. The United States is going through what we call a sidereal Pluto return. Now, you might say, well, what does that mean? Well, just to give you an idea, the Roman Empire was destroyed on a Pluto return. In fact, most of your historians will say somewhere between 240 and 250 years, give or take, nations tend to rise and fall. Well, the United States just turned 248 years old just a little over a month ago, and back in July 4th. And we are in a sidereal Pluto return. This country will either be destroyed as we know it, or it's going to be the phoenix rising out of the ashes by next year. And when you look at it, it's really not just happening in the United States, but globally. We're seeing Europe, Australia, all these westernized countries are under attack. And we're seeing attempts here with the European Union and many other things on infiltrating where literally they want global socialism, call it communism, if you will. If we go digital currency, we're in it. And not again, to get into politics, but I think this is where we're at right now. We are literally at a crisis point in this country. And this is going to be a really critical time. And the astrology shows that, every time we see a nation get in this, it either becomes, again, the phoenix rising out of the ashes, or it is broken up and destroyed. So we're there. And I think, that's where I would see all this. And the Q and the Derek Johnsons and all that stuff, there's probably a lot of truth to it, is what I see. Whether it's not 100% true, I'm not going to render my opinion, but there does seem to be some truth to these things. And we've got some very powerful forces going on right now. And this, again, was the same thing that was happening in World War II. Look back at what was happening there. You had the Federal Reserve Act in 1913. Right after that, World War I. Then the Great Depression and World War I followed. Very compressed condensation there. And a lot of power structures were transformed and changed. We're in that same type of cycle right now as we were 84 years ago.
Hey, Jeff, I can't believe the time went by so fast.
It moves, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Well, you want to tell people where they can find you, your podcast, and when it's on?
Yeah, the podcast, you can jump on YouTube. Right now we're on YouTube. We do lives every Monday and Thursday, and sometimes we actually did an extra one today. You can jump on any time, listen to it. And then you just go to Jeff Harman Astrologer. And then for readings, people go to my website, which is jeffharman.com, and that's HARMAN. And it's we have a lot of fun on that, and a lot of people come in and they give comments, and we answer what we can, and it's a lot of fun.
How's Hollywood Disclosure going? We got about 1 minute. How's that still going? Is it still building?
Yeah, it seems like it's still building. That's what I'm hearing. I think there's going to come a point where they're not going to be able to keep it quiet. What's interesting is in the media, we're seeing a lot of acknowledgement of it, and I don't think the government's just going to come out with some official declaration, yes, they're real, until something major happens. When might that happen? Well, I mean, you look at the work Linda Moulton Howe has done and so many other people. It's quite profound at the evidence that's out there. I mean, it's undeniable. I know I've had a motorcycle shut down once by it, and I mean, literally shut it down, and it started the next morning. So, I'm absolutely my grandmother, who was born in 1907, used to tell me in the early 1900s, they'd see fireballs shooting around in the field. One rolled right through the house one time. And not just fire, but like this plasma. We've got all kinds of stuff going on this planet.
Oh, we do. And let's talk about, my Harley did that, and my son's Harley, and my son's other, he had a Kawasaki, I think. We were
Wow.
going to the desert in Nevada, and we saw what we thought was a fireball. And all of a sudden, the motorcycles all just shut down. And
There
then,
you
a few minutes later, they started right up. But mine died. My son's died. They all died. So I don't know.
Yeah, I hear you, man. So yeah, I bought an Indian. I love the Indians. I used to have Harleys. I had BMWs. I love them. But I got an Indian now. I got to say, I really like it. It's a great-
I will say this. The older Harleys, you could put a TV dinner in it and drive 30 miles and it's ready.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, my friend, I want to thank you so much for taking your time to come on Friday, the 13th of all nights.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, my friend, you take care, will you?
You as well. Thanks for having me on.
Okay. We'll be right back with our next guest right here on Night Dreams Talk Radio. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Take a journey of adventure and discovery for the enigmatic giants of the forests. Read On the Trail of Bigfoot by Mike Dupler. The author himself describes it this way.
Having found possible Sasquatch evidence, namely trees driven into the ground upside down, thought to be territory markers, led me to investigate this creature in my native Ohio. Several years and many forays into Bigfoot territory, I have found incredible evidence, which inspired my book, On the Trail of Bigfoot. Bigfoot is alive and has many fantastic abilities. The evidence is out there for all to see, but you need to know what to look for. My book will inspire those who have answered the call to seek this elusive creature, the Bigfoot. The truth is out there.
Read On the Trail of Bigfoot by Mike Dupler. Available now at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and IndieBound.org. You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, the home of Night Dreams Talk Radio, with Gary Anderson, syndicated worldwide. Paranormal Talk Radio, like you remember.
Well, we're really moving quite along here tonight, aren't we, JC?
We are. We're moving quite smoothly and quite rapidly, actually.
Oh, yeah. Well, do you think we go through cycles, like Jeff said?
I definitely think we go through some kind of cycles because along the way there's some rebooting going on, as you would say.
Makes me wonder too. Again, the items that they found going back 16,000 years in Malaysia. This makes you wonder how many years before that man was walking this planet.
Yeah, because even today, if everything got wiped out, think about it. In 10,000 years, buildings and cars would all be gone. The earth reclaims everything. And so when you're finding these sites that is 16, 20, 30,000 years old, what would be left really?
Just think about a civilization to stop tomorrow. It wouldn't take more than a few years and the cities would start overgrowing with, with all type of plant life, and everything else would just kind of start rebooting.
It would. Matter of fact, you can go online and see different sites in South America and different portions of highways and cities. And you're right, it takes less than just a few years, and the jungles and woods will totally reclaim these things.
Well, look what they found here a year ago, another Maya, city in the middle of the Amazon. And, it was only found because of, the satellites, cameras found it. You think about how many more other areas that have been buried in that. It's really interesting. Again, a lot of people don't, 16,000 years, well, maybe 20,000 years ago, civilizations exist. And it reminds me of the Planet of the Apes. You remember in the one where he sees the statue of Liberty, and he said, blankety blank, you blankety did it. And then, also in the cave, what did they find? They found, a pair of glasses, and they found a baby doll that said, Mama.
Yeah, but you know what else? The ones that were affected by the nuclear fallout and stuff, they lived underground, and who was their god? Do you remember who they worshipped?
Yeah, the bomb.
I know, that was crazy.
Yeah. Where were the ETs to help them out?
Yeah. Well, the humans were the ETs. They crash landed into the future and the past.
I don't know. Do you think that's what is happening? You think that we're only time traveling? And I don't buy that theory. And, who's our next guest? And maybe we can talk a little bit about that besides Roswell.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you what. Our next guest is Frank Kimbler. And listen, he is an associate professor at New Mexico Military Institute, and he has actually researched the Roswell incident for many years. Matter of fact, he may even have found a little piece of the crash.
You did? Well, hey, Frank, did you find something?
You know what? I did. Actually, over a number of years, I found lots of fragments. But just recently, there's been some very nice fragments that have been found.
Interesting. Like how big of fragments?
The fragments are not very big. The fragments are generally maybe the size of your thumbnail or half the size of your thumbnail. They're kind of all folded up and twisted, and they essentially look like aluminum trash. But it's not all trash that's out there. There's some things that test out to be unusual, to say the least.
Okay, your microphone is moving or something, I think. Do you have your microphone built in your headphones?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Okay, that's what's saying we were getting movement sound off of it. Hey,
is this what you hear?
Yeah, I heard that.
Let me fix it.
Okay.
Probably better.
Okay, I'll just turn the volume up just a little bit. How did you find it?
These pieces that I've been finding out there for like the last 10 years are actually, they have been found with exclusively with a metal detector.
So you were out there with a metal detector. How deep down was it?
Pieces average anywhere from 2 to 6 inches. That's about as deep as I've managed to find them so far.
Well, the story too. After the crash, all these servicemen, shoulder to shoulder, were down on their hands and knees, looking for debris, and even that way, it was a good chance they would miss something.
Oh, they would have missed all kinds of things. There were storms out there, and in fact, the night that the crash happened was during some of our extreme, basically monsoon kind of weather, and it was lightning and thunder and storming and raining pretty hard, and they, it's a typical. Anytime an aircraft crashes, there's going to be little pieces and there's going to be big pieces. Those little pieces would be almost impossible to find. They could not pick it all up. It would be out there for years and years to come.
Well, too, they didn't have the technology, to be able, like metal detectors have really advanced. And what they had back then, again, if they even used anything like that, like the equipment they use for sweeping mines and stuff, I probably wouldn't detect little teeny pieces.
No, they would never be able to find that small stuff. And you're right, the kind of detectors that they had were made for sweeping minefields. They were made for finding large objects, not little tiny things buried in the ground.
And again, have you sent any of this metal off to the lab?
Absolutely. There was the last one that was sent off to Cerium Labs. It's a good lab. It was featured on the last documentary series that was on there was Alien Encounters, Fact or Fiction with Mitch and Chrissy. That was they sent that stuff off, and that was that came back with some interesting information.
Oh, well, what type of information did it come back? Can you divulge it?
Well, yeah, no, that's that was released on the show. It was kind of interesting because the show came back and said that it was pure aluminum, and when I mean pure, we're talking about 99.99%. It's what the show claimed. However, they gave me a copy of the lab report, and they misinterpreted the lab report, unfortunately. But it's the same type of alloy that we have found before. It is an unregistered 6000 series that is all of these aluminum alloys on Earth, unless they're top secret, have some kind of patent designation on them. And this one is similar to an alloy called a 6070. Now, that kind of alloy is not found as a foil. It's not even manufactured as a foil. It's used to build bridges and aircraft carriers, and it's basically huge construction material stuff. And why that's out there in foil form, I have no idea. But like I said, it was not a perfect match to a 6070. It's just very close.
And was there any other compounds, bound to it at all?
Oh, yeah. That particular alloy has magnesium in it. It's got silicon in it. It has a little bit of iron. It's got manganese in it. And then there's a bunch of trace things that are in there, a little tiny amount of zinc and some oddballs and stuff that we normally find on Earth.
Okay,
a 6070 alloy is not something that is rare, but what makes it kind of an oddity is the fact that this stuff out there is similar to that alloy, and it's found as thin foil. It's all folded up. It shouldn't exist that way. It's not supposed to be like that.
Okay, Frank, you're kind of muffling up with that microphone again. It's making a lot of static noise, and people are noticing that where they can't understand what you're saying. But yeah, if you think about it too, some of the stuff when I did research, not just from Roswell, but other locations where supposedly where they have recovered some type of material, especially like with aluminum, it's other stuff compounded with it, which we don't know how to bond it together here on this planet, or the technology to do it.
And that is very true. I've run across that. And I've read a lot about this, but there's nothing odd about this material. It's material that we can manufacture. We don't have a problem with it. It's not anything unusual. The unusual part is the fact that, like I said, this stuff is made for manufacturing like aircraft carriers and boats and ships and girders on bridges, but it's not used in foil, and that's what makes the big difference on this.
Can they figure the age of it at all, by any chance?
No. Determining the age on metals, I think, it's doable, but this has never been dated. The only thing you can possibly go by is maybe how deep it's been buried. So something that's 6 inches deep or a foot deep probably dates back to the time of like the 1940s, maybe early 50s, or maybe even a little bit later, but not much.
Now, that series of aluminum back in the 40s, especially around 47, or actually would have to be manufactured before that. Were we able to actually manufacture it at that time?
Not that one, not that alloy. We didn't have that. That alloy didn't come out until I think it was 1960s is when that one came out. So there was nothing like that in the 1940s at all.
Well, that's a dead giveaway. It's something really strange with that. How about some of the other pieces of metal you found there on Roswell?
There is, it's all in that 6,000 series. And yes, I have found some trash out there. The trash is easy to recognize. Trash is 1,000 series alloy. It's pieces of like typical aluminum foil. That's pie plates, things like that. I haven't found much of that. That's usually around the perimeter or maybe even up on the, there's like people have been camped out at like up at the top. It's kind of rare to find that out there, but it's also it's never buried deep. It's usually maybe ½ inch down. It's lying right on the surface, and so that's very easy to recognize. The stuff that I find is buried pretty deep, and it's old. It's very corroded and twisted and mangled up. And the newer stuff, which is a different alloy, is sitting very, very close to the surface. And yeah, I have found some things like aluminum foil out there, and I found some stuff that has come up to be essentially Mr. Rancher's beer can. So yes, I have found some trash out there. There's just not much of it, and it's always very close to the surface.
Well, if you look back at the wagon days when we were traveling to the West, and you go like in places like Boardman, Oregon, out in the desert, there's still ruts in the ground going back from the 1800s.
Oh,
now, yeah. If you go to like where Roswell, where the crash was, I hear there's still ruts in the ground.
There are the old roads are out there. The old ranch roads are still there, but right where basically what's called the debris field, where that is, there is one road that goes across, which is an older ranch road. It wasn't even there back in the 1940s. That road was in there at a probably back in the 70s is when that road was put in. And it just came from people driving in and out of there. But yeah, no, the old roads are still there from like the 1940s, and they're still used today. They are there, but they are not. I would have to say that those roads are probably maybe half a mile to a mile away from the actual what's called the debris field.
Well, in the debris field where it supposedly came down, with image of satellite. Now, again, I've seen some images, unless it's been dockered, where you can look at it and it looks like there was a rut created from something like skidding. Have you seen that?
There's been some digging that was done out there back with the university, but other than that, that's the only marks that have shown up out there. And I've pulled the images from the 1940s. And there's no ruts, but you can tell if you look at the image, if you know how to do a little bit of sleuthing on it, you can tell that the ground's been disturbed, but there's nothing that really shows where there might be a gouge, which is talked about a lot. That does not show up in the images, at least none that I have seen.
Again, where you found this, do you really feel at that night of 1947, at that time, there were supposedly thunderstorms, lightning, heavy downpour. There was also a group, the Army Air Force had a whole bunch of radar, was still fairly new. So they had radar systems all over the area, which were transmitting at that time an ultra low frequency. If you take that with the storm and lightning, do you think possibly that could have caused the crash of the UFO?
That is a distinct possibility, and I've read that. I've read those accounts. That has to do with sounds kind of exotic. It has to do with like scalar waves, radio waves crossing each other, and yeah, it's a possibility because those radar systems back then were tremendously powerful. And who knows? The aliens may not have known what they were getting into between the lightning storm and our super powerful radars. And there was like 3 of them at the time scattered around New Mexico. And it could have disrupted their navigation, their engines. Who knows how they fly? But yeah, it could have messed them up and it could have forced them down. That's a distinct possibility.
Now, supposedly, correct me if I'm wrong, it actually came down, kind of like crashed, and then managed to recover and go a little farther and then make the final crash. Is that right?
That is true. I've read. I'm good friends with Don Schmidt, and I know about that. This area that's called the debris field is where the thing kind of broke up, and there was kind of a part of it that call it an escape pod or whatever that traveled several miles on farther to the southeast and crashed on what's called the Old Martin Ranch. And that site's currently under investigation right now. We're working on it. Don's working on it. I'm working on it. We're trying to find some archaeological evidence that the military was out there and that the crash was there. There seems to be some aerial photographs that indicate that there was definitely some disturbance out on the ranch site, which makes it kind of fascinating. And what's nice about it is it's on private land, which makes it a little bit easier for us to access because we know the ranch owner. He's actually pretty nice. The Roswell debris field right now is sealed off pretty good. The current owners of the surrounding land has now locked all the gates. It's darn near impossible to get in there.
Well, that's probably because he got tired of everybody looking for, proof that it was there. But I can't blame him from that standpoint. But again, if this all happened, like Congress, I was watching, this disclosure, and I call it a circus, and people get mad at me. But I was listening to like all these people from the CIA, the Pentagon, DOD, and when they brought up Roswell, it never happened.
Oh, you hear that all the time.
It never existed, never happened.
Yeah, did you see the hearings where they had David, what's his name, Grush?
Yeah.
I watched that thing very intently, and I was absolutely fascinated with some of the things that he said, and with the senators there and other people that have done some really, really good research on this. And yeah, Roswell was brought up in that, but they never really talk about it very much, or they basically sort of they've always shoved it under the carpet because it is, I don't know why, it's the most well documented, and it's amazing the witnesses that are there, and all of them are gone. I don't think there's a single one that's left right now. And it's a well-proven UFO crash site. I mean, very well proven.
It is. We got a caller. Who do we have out there?
Hey, this is Elvis again.
Yeah. Okay. We have a different guest on now. We're talking about Roswell.
Yeah. I wanted to ask him, has he ever heard of the books called, or the author called Nos Confunded? He talks about Earth, or talks about the outer Antarctic ice wall. And he talks about like there's 178 worlds. There's ETs that control Earth right now. I don't know if I want to know if has he done any research on Nos Confunded and the story.
I personally haven't read those. I'm a scientist and I have a very, very open mind. Probably one of the few scientists out there that believe in interdimensional travel and time travel. And I look at all things. There are so many books and so many people that have created some fantastic little different scenarios about what's going on Earth and who has visited us. And I have not had a chance to read them all, unfortunately. And there's some good ones out there.
Did you have another question for Frank? No, I guess not. Okay. Well, when you really think about all this stuff, and one thing too about Roswell, look at all the witnesses, and why would people in the military go up knocking on people's doors and basically in a roundabout way threaten people?
Oh, that has come up time and time again. I was lucky enough to have met Frankie Rowe, and she at a very young age, of course, was one of the people that got to see this material. I met her not too long before she passed away, and when she told the story, she said that the military basically came in and threatened her family, and they actually told her that they would find, if she mentioned anything about what she said, that they would find her parents dead in the desert. She cried when she told that story. I don't know, I believe her. I believed her story. because she was out there. It was her. I think it was her grandfather. I don't remember. I don't keep track of that. So I was lucky enough to have met her, and then I also met Jesse Marcel Jr. Before he passed away, and I had a wonderful conversation with him. Going out to the crash site. He was in my car. He was with me for about 6 hours, along with his daughter. Was with me, and I had a great conversation with him. You know, at a very young age, he held this stuff in his hands in his house. His father brought home, and he's saw the material in his hand, and I talked to him about it. It was incredible talking to him.
Okay, well, are we talking about the material? You could wad it back up, and it would go back into its shape.
Yeah, you know, he not that material, because I don't think he saw that. And of course, I'm going to get a nasty gram from Don, but he's the one that talked about the little I-beam and the that had the writing on it. And that's probably one of the more profound pieces of evidence. I wish we had that, the little I-beam with the alien writing on it. But he remembered that and talked about it. He drew it up, and that I-beam is talked about. He saw that, and that was an absolutely amazing find. And he saw that at a young age. He told me about that. You know, he was only like 10, 11 years old when his dad brought that material home, and he got to see it. And I think there was a mention of it being very lightweight and very unusual material, but I don't remember anything about having it, you know, wadding it up and unfold. But I do remember about the I-beam specifically.
Very interesting. We have another caller. Who do we have?
This is Tom.
Hi, Tom. What's your question?
My question for your guest is, I just want his opinion on how many craft that people are seeing, UFOs, UAPs, are partially back-engineered craft that either the United States or other industrialized nations have put into the skies on our planet.
You know, I really do think that we have acquired technology, and because of national security, they meaning our government, other governments don't tell anybody exactly what we have and what's out there. But I really do strongly believe that we have back-engineered things for aircraft. We may have some of those UAPs that actually belong to us, including the ones that are under the water and both on the air and above the water as well. The underwater ones and the air ones. They're fascinating, and I believe that some of those are ours. They just don't want to talk about it. Because they have revolutionary propulsion systems that are far different than anything we have, and they just don't let that information out because meaning our government and other governments are afraid of what the ramifications might be.
Yeah, but you know, I was reading an article here recently. This retired admiral was talking about the speed that these things can travel. We're talking over 1,000 miles an hour, he's claiming, underwater.
Underwater, and I know that, and I've listened to him. I don't remember what his name was, but I've watched the documentary that he was on, and I listened to some of the things that he said. These things are incredibly fast, faster than anything that we've got. And the interesting thing about that is that when you travel at those speeds underwater, you have something called cavitation, and simply because we can't do it. You know, we can do it to a small degree, but speeds like that are incredible. And it is, to do that underwater, you have to have complete control of the physical properties of seawater and the things that are around you. And we, as far as I know, don't have that technology. I
don't think we do. Russia has a technology with their torpedoes that can go really fast. What it does is it creates a bubble.
Yep. That's exactly what they do. It's not as fast as you think it is, but it's fast enough. It does put that bubble around it, and I've read that. We have that technology too, but I don't think they travel anywhere near 1,000 miles an hour under the water.
You could think about 1,000 miles an hour. And, you know, he also claims that there is alien bases. You know, let's face it, there's parts of the ocean that has never, ever, ever been, you know, mapped anything. And the depth of it, you're talking miles and miles down. In some areas, around 21, 22 miles down.
Actually, the deepest part of the ocean is over in the Marianas Trench, the Challenger Deep. That is just a little bit over 7 miles deep. That's the deepest part of the ocean.
Okay.
Our average depth of the oceans is a couple of miles down. That's the average depth. So it's and you're right. We've only explored a very, very, very small percentage. I bet probably 5% of the ocean, if even less of that. Has been, we've mapped it, but we have not been down there to look at it. And the maps are good. We can do that with sonar and such. But you're right. The ocean is unexplored territory, and there could be all kinds of. What a wonderful place to hide if you are a civilization from another world to come to visit us and wanted to explore Earth and its surroundings. What a wonderful place to hide would be deep down in the ocean so that no one would ever find you.
Yeah, well, you think about maybe this craft is moving 1,000 miles an hour is one of those craft that come up and go up in the sky. I don't know, but you really think about it. So many people are so still naive. As long as I've been doing, talk radio, so many people think that we are the only life, if intelligence out there in all
Gary,
the galaxies and solar systems.
Think about this. If we are the only intelligent life forms in the universe, that is incredibly scary considering what we do and how we act. But it's equally as scary to believe that there are maybe thousands of civilizations superior to us that's out there. We don't know whether they're good. We don't know whether they're bad. We have no idea. So we have that interesting conundrum between the two, us being the only smart ones in the entire universe, which is, I don't believe that one iota, and the other one being that there are thousands of civilizations more advanced than we are, which I strongly believe in.
Well, here's another thing that always gets me. A lot of people I've interviewed, they have this philosophy that they are not going to be warriors. They're going to be they're going to help us. They're going to be loving and give off orders. But, I always say this on the show a lot. I go back to the Bible days, Cain and Abel, and look what happened to the brother. He got slain. Look what's going on since man started walking the earth and still going on today. People are killing each other just because some planet, some, whatever life out there is advanced. They still could have that trait of warrior in them. Where, again, we don't know if these aliens, if there are aliens, are friendly or lovable. They could be all kinds of ones out there. So if you sit there and think they're going to stop a nuclear war, I wouldn't want to go to the casino on that odds.
And you know what? I agree with you 100% on that. We don't know who the good guys are, who the bad guys are. And I'm sure that there's, what's the movie? Independence Day. I love that. That was a great movie. They came down and basically they didn't want to have peace. They wanted our resources is what they wanted. They didn't care about us. It might boil down to resources. We may have something that the other worlds need or want, whether it be water or gold or whatever. Water is pretty abundant in the universe, so it's not water. That we may have something that they want. Maybe it's us. Maybe they want our genetic material to enhance their population. I have no idea. Maybe we came from that. That's always an interesting proposition. That we are in fact the children of aliens, and they just modified our ancient DNA as back billions of years ago. That there's always that possibility.
Well, if you really go back to the Sphinx, to the Great Pyramid, or any of the pyramids all over the world, because isn't that kind of strange that there's pyramids all over the world that resemble each other? And why?
It's incredible.
I mean, they didn't have the internet. They didn't have a way to communicate with other, people across the universe, or I should say the planet. So you have the Mayas, you had the Incas, you had the Egyptians, you had whoever created the Sphinx.
You did. You had people down in Indonesia as well that actually built pyramids. You had the Native Americans that built our versions of the pyramids over here, in addition to what was down in South America as well. So that particular shape of pyramids is interesting. The idea that the Egyptians and the Mayans and the Incas have simply darn near the exact same format tells you, and they didn't know each other. They didn't communicate with each other, not as far as I know, yet something taught them how to build that particular shape. So maybe it was visitors from space that did that.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. And what happened to the original civilizations?
Where are they?
Yeah,
that's a good question.
Yeah, like the Mayas, they had a really big civilization and cities and technology that, everything from sewers to everything, way more advanced than even if you think of the Roman Empire was. Far more advanced, I should say. And then all of a sudden, they just drop off the earth.
The speculation on that is that that some of that came about from climate change. They suffered from drought. They ended up they had very strange religious practices. They essentially ate each other.
Did they have barbecue sauce though?
Yeah. Yeah. Did they have barbecue sauce? That's a good question. I'd like to know what that recipe is.
Let's invite our my producer over for a barbecue.
It tastes like chicken. There's lots of speculation about that they sort of, they're still around. I mean, they didn't completely disappear because there are relatives of the Incas and there are relatives of the Mayan.
But their civilization collapsed.
The civilizations themselves essentially disappeared is what they did. Those big cities that were out there got overgrown with the jungle because there were too many wars and too much infighting, and that's just stuff that I have read about. And I'm sure that the scholars may come back and say, "Hey, you don't know what you're talking about." But no, that they had wars. They fought with each other, and then it didn't help when the Spaniards came over and essentially
plundered
plundered them. That did not help the situation least bit in the world.
But see, again, now here's they came in, right? And they wanted the gold. Now, if you really think about this, again, why did they even put so much, how can you call it? Why not copper? Why not pewter? Why not lead? Why did they worship gold?
Maybe because it was shiny yellow like the sun.
That's a possibility.
I have no idea.
But
mystery to me.
But
that's actually a very good question.
But maybe, again, at one point, they were slaves for E.T. It came down here and was harvesting the planet of gold.
And that is there was cowboys and aliens, or aliens and cowboys, was all about the aliens coming down, and they were in fact mining gold. They used it as like a fuel source or something on board their ship.
Yeah, people don't realize gold is everything from your ring to electronics to even in medical. Gold is used in medicine.
You're right.
So
it's used. It has wonderful thermal properties. It's it can be used to insulate. It's conduct electricity. It has amazing properties. So it does all kinds of things.
Now, can you hang in for another 15 minutes, or if
sure, that's not a problem.
Okay, now Roswell, let's get back to that.
Yeah.
What happened to the bodies? Because, again, there were bodies, and supposedly, again, depending on who you talk to, there were all the dead bodies, but one live one. And then there was also, they talked about how they shot one too. I don't know all this stuff because, again, some of it's folklore, some of it, it's just handed down. I don't know. But have you ever tried to do any research? What happened to the ET bodies?
I have never done any of the research on what happened to the bodies. All that's out there is what's been written and handed down by the various authors, where they brought the bodies back into Roswell. There was an autopsy that was done on them. What happened to the bodies after that? You hear that they were flown out to was it Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, or who knows where they went to. They may have gone to other places for storage. And yeah, I heard this story about one being alive, and I heard that he stayed alive for a very long time. I don't know. These are all things that that are part of the Roswell story, and it gets to be kind of vague because there's no real other than witnesses that say, yeah, we heard people talking or we've seen it. There's no touchy-feely. I'm the guy that goes out and looks for physical evidence, and I have I know the stories, but I don't follow the part about the body parts of it. Where they were, what happened. I know 2.5 miles southeast of the debris field, kind of in between what's called the debris field and that final resting place, what was actually the area called the body site, that's out there where there was supposed to have been some bodies that were found. That part of the story is more than likely true, only because I know one of the a friend of a friend that was a business partner with the person that actually found the bodies out there, which was kind of interesting. And he never would talk to anybody in reference to it at all, not even with his business partner, and it kind of scared him. So I'm sure he found something that was unusual, so that body story is probably true, but I don't know where the bodies are. I have no idea.
Yeah, could you imagine that too? Again, if that would have came out in the news. Here's another thing, just changing it a little bit. A lot of people think that the public could handle really honest disclosure. And here's my feeling. We're never going to be told the truth. We might be fed a little bit of this, a little bit of information, a little bit of disinformation, and keep it in the mix. Because like I've said so many times, if the government came out, Frank, and said, you know what, we do have crashed UFOs, we have bodies. The next thing people are going to wonder, well, okay, if you have that, why did you lie to us for all these years? And then if you lied to us for all these years about that, then everything else you've told us, do we believe anything anymore? So
they always put that under the general designation of national security. They always, meaning the government always calls it national security. That's where they put that. There's a lot of stuff out there that we just don't know. It's amazing because things like CDs and the CD players, the little round CD discs, I knew about those in the 1960s. They didn't come out in the 1960s. I knew because I knew a guy that worked for Western Electric, RCA. He was an engineer there, and he said, "Oh, I got to tell you what's in our labs. We have TVs you can hang on a wall." This was back in the 60s.
Yeah.
All right. He said, "We have TVs that you can hang on the wall. We have these little discs that we store information on." We didn't have that. That stuff didn't come out on the market, but he said, "We have this stuff in our labs." And I'm going, "Oh, well, where did it?" I wasn't very old at the time. I was only like 12 years old. I'm going, "Well, where did this stuff come from?" Which is kind of fascinating. So who knows what the government only lets out, and this is stuff that I hear, it's not a conspiracy. Basically, everything that we see and hear and talk about today is stuff that's 20 or 30 years old. Our government knew about it 20 or 30 years ago, and they're just now letting it out. So they knew about it a long time ago. I suspect that there's some stuff that we have right now that will just knock your socks off.
I wouldn't doubt that. My dad was an electronic engineer, and back in, when Boeing was going to build the SST Super Transport.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, my dad was working on electronics for it, coming up with ideas and working on that. And, I've always been infatuated with electronics. In fact, I've said this so many times. I had my amateur license when I was 12 years old.
Yeah, I've got that.
Yeah, of course, I don't have it no more. But, here's the thing. I always was fascinated with electronics. And one day I asked my dad, I said, why from the early 1900s, or actually late 1800s, tubes were invented. And, the circuits, how all of a sudden did we go from, yes, I understand, from tubes to the transistors, but all of a sudden integrated circuits and fiber optics and all this stuff. And my dad looked at me, he goes, it doesn't make sense. Technology was dragging so long, and all of a sudden it took a big jump. And it took two big jumps. One was the transistor, two fiber optics, and then integrated circuits.
And it all came very, very fast. Kind of interesting that it all seemed to be floating around the same time that we had all of these UFO sightings, and including the from the 40s, early 50s, and that's when this technology started exploding. When you think about that, it all started, you could probably trace it back to UFOs.
I would think so. And Colonel Casal, maybe releasing it. I don't know. Again, some of his stuff I don't buy, but a lot of it, everything that research I did on him, he was during, an intelligence during World War II. Everything kind of lines up. So, maybe he was dispersing stuff like this to industry to, back engineer it. Now, one thing on going out there, do you plan to go out to the debris field anymore?
I was out in that general area just a few weeks ago because I'm actually looking for another site, because in the story, a scientist by the name of Lincoln LaPaz found a site a few miles away from what's called the debris field. That was where the object touched down and actually fused the ground and melted it over an area. And there was supposedly some more like fragments of metal. They found like something similar to like a black box out there that they could not open up. They had no idea what it was made out of. That was found in that same area. This is all stories. I believe the Lincoln LaPaz story, because that one is fairly well documented, and I am actively right now researching, looking for the fused ground site, because if that is found, that would be an absolutely incredible discovery that would help to add more fuel to the idea that the Roswell crash was in fact a UFO. And Lincoln LaPaz was a very well-known scientist that worked for the University of New Mexico. He studied meteorites, and he did try to research. He was hired by our government to work on the trajectory of the Roswell UFO, to figure out where it came from, how it was flying, things like that. And then he found this fused glass, and I want to find that. And I'm being a geologist, I've got some ideas. I've been out to the area where I think it's located. That's under research right now, and I want to find that, because that's very much a part of the Roswell story.
It is too, and that makes sense too. Art Bell was a friend of mine, and he had a piece of metal that it was sent to him, and he sent a piece of it to the lab, and it came back as nothing. Actually, he sent it to a couple labs, and I think Linda Morton Howell had a piece of it, and too, that she got from him and finally sold it. But it was compound again that it could not have been put together on this planet.
Now, I know that story quite well, and I know exactly where that material came from.
Well, I like to know, because I've seen it, so I would like to know.
Yeah, that I've held that material in my hand, because Linda, we did a documentary to get together, and she had some of the material, and I held it in my hand. But then not too long after that, I had a lady from Florida send me some pictures and some exactly the same material. And then I did some more research and found out that it came from a lead foundry in Florida. So what she had was basically foundry material that looked exotic. We just didn't, and it's a foundry where they process both lead and zinc and manganese and bismuth, and it ended up being the stuff that she had was slag, and I have wonderful pictures of it. It is identical to the stuff that Linda had. They beat that horse completely to death, claiming that it had, and even sold pieces to the government for investigation. It turns out to be foundry slag, and that I have proof of.
But some of it was sold for quite a bit of money.
$35,000, my understanding is, for a piece of that, was sold to the Stars Academy or whoever took that over, and then it went to the government so they could do research. That was my understanding is that stuff was pretty bogus, and everybody fell into that trap, including me for a while until I did some more research on it.
Oh, wow. Oh, now I don't feel so bad. Because, I saw it and Art was so convinced it was real.
Oh, you know what? When I first had that stuff in my hand, when I saw it, when Linda let me hold it in my hand and I looked at that, and I've got pictures of it, close-up pictures, and I'm going, this stuff is absolutely, positively amazing. And then when I got, like I said, 6 weeks, a couple of months after, and this lady sent me a bunch of pictures that said that her grandmother gave her a big pile of this stuff. And I'm going, oh, my God. And did some research and found that it was basically slag from a foundry. I really felt like, you know what, you make discoveries in science, and scientists sometimes feel like idiots when they find out that there's stuff that they believe in is not true, but that one is not a true story.
I feel, at least Art isn't here, but how did Linda take it when she found that out, I wonder?
I think she was friends with Art Bell.
Oh, yeah, she was good friends, yes.
Yeah. So, and I think that's how she acquired that material. Mm-hmm. She didn't know either at the time. It just looks exotic, and Hal put off. He thought it was exotic too, and it's just comes from the fact that we want to believe in something so much that we believed in that material being the so-called metamaterial that was really, really exotic and had all kinds of interesting properties, when in fact it really wasn't that. It has to do with belief. It really does. We want to believe so hard in something that we make it true. We believe so hard in something, we actually try to make it come true.
Well, I'm just wondering, at the lab he sent it to, how could they come up with a report that was no way it could have been compounded on Earth when you're saying it's foundry?
Now, that I can't answer, but there's a lot of weird things that end up in the electronics industry and in the foundry industry that they're just accidents. These things come about and they look odd, and people keep them back because they look really weird, and they stick them in the jewelry cabinet, and then somebody pulls it out, or a jewelry box, and people pull it out and say, oh, look at this is really weird. I tell you, the weirdest thing that I've ever held in my hand, and I don't know whether you've ever had any of it in your hand, it's this stuff called air gel. It's what we use to insulate the space shuttle so it can withstand re-entry. It's basically solid smoke. It has no weight. This stuff is incredible to hold in your hand. And if you were to see a piece of this, you would think it was alien material. It is absolutely incredible. Have you ever seen that?
No, I haven't.
Oh, air gel is amazing. You can hold a cubic, 2 or 3 cubic inches in your hand. It practically has no weight, and you can see through it. It looks like basically it looks like smoke is what it looks like, and you can put an oxyacetylene torch to it, and it won't. It doesn't melt or do anything. It just kind of sits there and laughs at you. So it's pretty cool stuff. I've got a couple of pieces that I acquired a long time ago. It's really neat, but it's used as shielding on our reentry for our spacecraft. It is amazing material. It really is.
See, if we would have found that 30 years ago, and I don't know.
We probably had it 30 years ago. It's very easy to make. I mean, you could, if you just need a few simple things, you could make the stuff in your kitchen. It's not that hard to make.
So what are your plans in the future? What's going on, Frank?
You know what? I want to. I'm a physical evidence researcher for UFOs, and I'm not done with Roswell yet. I'm going to hammer this until I have some evidence in my hand that basically says, yeah, this happened. Yeah, we've got the eyewitnesses, but you know what? I want to. I want to look at Aztec. Everybody debunks that. I want to look at the Aztec crash. And I want to look at a few other crash sites, not only in the United States but globally. I want some physical evidence that proves this up. I want something that when people see it, they're going to say, "Yeah, this is definitely from a UFO." I'm not done with this stuff yet. Like I said, physical evidence is a hard nut to crack because it takes very expensive laboratory analyses to do it. And But by golly, you know what? I'm gonna find that. Don Schmidt calls it the Holy Grail. I'm gonna find a piece of Holy Grail, and the world is gonna know it when I find it.
Well, we need proof somewhere. If the government isn't going to come out, we certainly need to find the proof. You know that.
We do, and that's my passion. Although I haven't found it yet, and I'm not going to give up on it. It's very tenacious. If somebody wants to throw some things my way, some little bones, and say, "Hey, take a look at this stuff," I'm more than happy to look at it.
Now, do you have a website or anything you want to share to the listeners?
No, people can contact me at my my email address. It's the initial F as in Frank, last name Kimbler, KIMB as in boy, LER @gmail.com. I will answer if I don't get too busy doing stuff. But that is my email that I respond to, and I get a lot of things that come in from people for all kinds of stuff. But if you're legitimate and you got something you want to talk about, I'll respond to you. That's not a problem.
Hey, Frank, I want to thank you so much for coming on at the last moment, and especially on Friday the 13th of all days.
I didn't even think about that. You had to remind me about that. Maybe that's why my microphone kept cutting in and out. So who knows?
You never know. Well, Frank, well, keep in touch with us, will you?
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure. I always enjoy coming on these and talking about it. I sent a little notice out on Facebook. I hope people were listening in.
Okay, my friend, you take care.
You too.
Okay. Well, JC, what do we got going next week with guests?
We got all kind of things going on, but we only have 2 shows next week, starting off on Wednesday with Mr. Douglas Preston coming on, and he's covers some subjects like raising the mammoths, the Mayans, lost tombs, Oak Island.
And then Friday,
Friday we're going to have Joe Stillwell coming on. He has had ET contacts, abductions, and he's a sculptor. He sculpted life-size head figure and figure of what he saw, and it's mind-blowing. We have pictures I'll send to you.
Okay, yeah, have them, send me the images, and I'll load it up on, and we can show the listeners.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, that's interesting too. And it's all this stuff is going on about disclosure. We're talking a little bit more about UFOs again than normal, but we have a special guest coming on October 11th. I know he's been on a lot of shows, but we're going to do it a little bit different interview with him than everybody else because I do everything a little bit strange. So who do we have on October 11th?
We have Lou Elizondo coming on. And listen, if you haven't heard of Lou Elizondo in UFO field, you have not been paying attention.
I guess not. And who do we have the last 2 weeks of this month? Or the last week of the month, I should say.
Well, last week we have Ruta Lee coming back on for Wednesday the 25th. And then, let's see.
Yeah, she's a famous actress. And, movies and all that. Oh, yeah. TV shows.
Tim Schwartz going to come on and talk about time travel, matter of fact.
Oh, that one professor I've been trying to get you to get on. We'll talk after the air. There was an article just came out yesterday that he said that he figured out the formula to make time travel real.
Interesting.
You know who I'm talking about? His name starts with the M.
Yeah, I know who you mean.
We need to contact him again.
Okay.
It was a big news article about it. He claims he's actually found the formula to where we can go and time travel. Could you imagine? I want to go back to, do I really want to go back? Do you really want to go back? Could you imagine going back 30, 40 years and go knock at your old parents' house and say, "Hey, Dad, well, who in the hell are you?" And then all of a sudden you see some little kid come out and that's you. But why don't you remember it if you time travel? I don't know.
I do not know, but it's you're going to give me a headache thinking about it.
Don't think about it. Well, anyway, I still got a couple cases of barbecue sauce. If aliens want to come down, I'm not donating myself, but there's certainly some people out there that, if you're going to have a barbecue, I can make a recommendation.
Yeah, I know you can. You're good at that.
Yeah. Are you prepared for it? What would you do? Seriously, we got about 3 minutes. If we got invaded by aliens, what would you do? 1, would you go under your bed? 2, go in the closet. 3, take a gun and shoot yourself in the head, or 4, try to run away?
I wouldn't do that either. I would, if you can't talk it out, just like anybody else, we'll duke it out.
Well, how about if they got a gun and they zap you? Go zap, and you're gone.
Well, if they can zap me before I can zap them, I guess we'll find out. I don't know what else to say about it but that. But anyway.
Haven't you seen the later War of the Worlds? The last one, it was made, not Tom Cruise, the other one. I can't think of the name of the actor. But they were taking people, zapping them and bringing them on the spacecraft. Put them in pods and letting them hang in the, as a pod inside the craft.
I did not see that one.
No, you didn't? Well, you need to go on YouTube. You know that. And by the way, speaking about YouTube, I want to say first, I want to thank all the truckers out there and all the listeners worldwide. I mean, worldwide. You know that, JC, I am shocked of all the people from Timbuktu to Nebraska that listen to this show.
A lot. There's a lot of people that's been tuning in, and we've been gaining a lot of people, especially on the YouTube, that's been tuning in. So very thankful for that.
Thailand, Vietnam, Singapore, India, big audience, and it's seriously in India. I didn't realize it because they're into the paranormal, but I didn't realize. I just thought we did the show and people locally, in the United States listen, and maybe Canada, United States. It's all over the world.
All world. We're worldwide. That's what that WW means, worldwide, Gary.
All time zones, like Art Bell used to say.
And truth be known, I bet we're even in the universe because, shows we did 5 years ago is just getting somewhere that's 5 light years.
I hope not. The shows 5 years ago sucked.
We're coming down. What's wrong with you?
I don't know. But, I was just reading an article. Radio is dying. Internet's taking over. And how many people, people Bluetooth their cell phones to their radio systems in their trucks and their cars. And a lot of people don't listen to radio anymore. They just go and listen to their favorite podcast or favorite show right off their phone, Bluetoothing it into their equipment. And in fact, some of the new cars already have internet radio. So, really, radio as we know it is dying. And, it's changed too, because you don't have regular hosts much on radio stations anymore. It's all canned. It's all faked.
Yeah, it's gonna be obsolete, like newspapers and actually the mailman one these days.
Yeah. Yeah. No matter if it rains or snows, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the internet's really messed up the post office too. They said that their revenue is way, way down. So what they do, you want to ship a package to a loved one or somebody you don't like, you pay a huge fee now because the post office isn't making money. So they got to gouge somebody.
Yeah. The stamp is almost at $1 and you're paying almost $1 a pound to ship anything.
Okay, who was on chat here tonight? Do you remember anybody?
Well, we've had Mr. December or Mrs. December. We had June Gypsy, Bob Clark. Tom was on there from Metatron. We had some new people on there.
Yeah, we had,
Oscar was on there.
And Rebelling Truth.
Rebel for the Truth, yes.
Yeah, Rebel for the Truth.
Yep. And there were some others earlier on. I can't remember who they were.
Well, what I couldn't understand is that chat. Here's another thing with YouTube. You think there's like only 13 or 14 people. That's only the people are the ones that don't click in but are watching it and don't go on chat. Because I'll tell you, the phone line was going steady. So I only wanted to take 1 or 2 calls. And then, of course, Tom called in. And he didn't talk about his new car anyway. So anyway, we're going to get out of here to next Wednesday. Make sure you tune in to Dr. JC on Monday. He has a great show. I listened to part of it. It was recorded. It'll be put out there live, though, on Monday. You want to make sure you tune that in at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific time. Very interesting. Dr. JC, the doctor of, the paranormal. He has helped so many people in the past with evil spirits and ghosts and strangeness in their houses and all that stuff, haven't you?
Oh, my goodness. I could write a book that would blow your mind. Yes.
Yeah,
sure.
well, don't write the book again in your closet and come back and say, hey, the last week I've been writing this book, Gary, but guess what? I was writing on the wall instead. And I go, why were you writing on the wall and not on the tablet? Well, it was dark in the closet. I don't have a light.
Yeah, I'll probably have to get a ghostwriter.
Yeah, well, you probably. We'll talk to you later, everybody. Have a good one.
Who's friends with all the night dreamers talking to you at night? Gary on the radio, but maybe he's not inside. Bigfoot's on his tail, flying UFOs, that's right. Gary's Talk Show Radio, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday nights. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Dreamers Talk Show will fix your despair. If you want to talk conspiracies, Night Dreamers is